Hey Zwifters, I'm Simon Schofield and this is the Zwiftcast. Coming up, the ladies are flocking to Zwift. The Zwiftcast FTP Test 101. Tips to nail that test. Zwift Virtual Rankings. Where do you stand? And the big trainer debate, wheel on or wheel off. One Zwifter tests and decides. Well, here we go again, and welcome to my Zwifty pals, Nathan Guerra. Yo, dude.
Hey, Simon.
And fresh from the first big bike race of the season, the Llama is live from the home of the Tour Down Under. Shane Miller, g'day, mate.
G'day, Simon. Yep, coming to you from really hot Adelaide today.
Yes, I've seen reports of 40 degrees centigrade, and as we were just talking before we started, in my view, that's too hot to ride.
My level of test or litmus test is if your teeth are hot when you're riding, it's too hot to ride. For me, about 38 degrees, you know, the hot wind, and you've got your mouth open, and if you feel your teeth and they're hot, it's time to go home.
Yeah, that sounds good test for me. Luckily, we don't get that problem in the UK too often. Nathan, Zwift Community Live is finally live.
It is a new hub for the community in order to highlight all the awesome things that are happening in the community. And it's just something that kind of needed to happen. And everything that's happening that's awesome, but in a live format. So we're promoting events, groups, individuals, the latest news, in a live format. It has been happening in a kind of scattered form, and we're just kind of trying to bring it all together. And there's going to be highlighted streams specifically through our Facebook and places that we can really highlight the leaders in live streaming amongst the community. So we're actually looking out for those right now, and they're coming on like crazy. And there is a schedule that's going to be launched actually this coming Monday. I think the podcast might already be out at that point, but yeah, we're about to launch a full-time schedule. The goal is 24/7 awesomeness in Zwift, hopefully down the road to serve all the world time zones. So.
Wow. So it's going to be more than just racing.
Oh yeah, definitely much more than just racing. Some of the groups that we're looking to highlight are the awesome coaching groups that are out there doing rides live on Zwift, the group rides. I mean, we're targeting everything that the community is doing. We want to find the leaders that can pull off a quality stream that can highlight what they're up to through a live streaming format.
It looks exciting. Nathan, I know it's been a long time in the planning. And like I say, I mean, you know, I hang around a lot in Zwift world because of the podcast and because of the job I do. But it's become much more visible, even to me, just this week since it started appearing on Facebook. So congratulations on that and good luck with it. I mean, you know, yet again, it looks like another fantastic initiative to keep people connected. Okay, let's get going with some other stuff. I'd rather not mention the volcano.
I wasn't prepared for that. You caught me off guard.
No, but we're not mentioning the volcano because, you know, you can bet your bibby that it's going to be out within minutes of the podcast being published, but or erupt or something. Anyway, so let's kick off with something else. Power-ups for pussies. No!
Oh, my God. So that was going on during a live stream. And half the people who are interacting with it were in my live stream interacting with me about the post in Facebook at the same time. And it was like this, and like Carissa was in there and things just got crazy in the live stream while that was going on. And people were reacting in both places. It was pretty intense, actually. I think Shane even came in too for a second, but then
I
don't know
in
what
every
happened.
now and then, yep.
Well, listen, we'll talk about that later. We will talk about that later. But we should probably start off actually with it's a bit of a negative, really. Well, it's kind of a negative, but it's kind of not. It was the outage. And for those who might have missed it, Zwift went down during the live streamed GCN race, which was kind of on a global platform. And it was, what was it, shall we say? It was awkward. It's the third outage this month, and in percentage times of how downtime and uptime is measured, which it is in percentage terms, it's absolutely tiny. But in impact terms, this time it was a little bit different, wasn't it? Nathan, you were involved, I think, behind the scenes in the streaming. It was a bad moment, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I think being in the eyes of the public and then everybody who's trying to log on at the same time. So I think, if you have an outage and it's a normal time to use Zwift and it's down for 15 minutes, no big deal. But if there's all this kind of hype around it, it causes a little bit more of a ruckus, And so I just hope, my main hope is that it doesn't turn people off because first of all, this is not unusual at all in the gaming world. This happens all the time. A lot more on other platforms. Actually, Zwift, as far as a platform goes, compared to other online MMOs, is stellar, actually. But our expectation around training is much higher. Do you see? You know what I mean? And so, there's this
all dressed up and ready to go.
Yeah, exactly. Rather than I just got to log in or I got to wait another 15 minutes, but I have an hour and a half workout planned. And so it has a little bit higher expectation around it to get this specific time in. And there's a reflection on me as to whether or not I got my time in correctly. And the reflection when you're playing World of Warcraft is a little bit different on me, whether or not I got to play World of Warcraft. So I mean, it's been I would like to say it's been absolutely stellar. At the same time, it is really frustrating.
I mean, Shane, we've talked about this before lots of times, actually, about leaping onto the keyboard when things get a bit sticky for whatever reason. But it's slightly different, isn't it, when you put your shorts on, you've turned your fan on, you put your shoes on, you want to do a workout, and the platform's down. I mean, again, we should counsel caution here because in the big scheme of things, it's no big deal, but you can understand people's frustration.
Oh, for sure. Look, and even as you mentioned before about jumping on the keyboard too fast, look, I'll turn the acid the other way. I think Zwift might have jumped on the keyboard a bit too fast because initially it was blamed on capacity. And they were saying, there's capacity issues right at this time with everyone logging into the module. And that was the initial words that were given about what had taken place from Zwift official. And then that changed later on to it was an AWS disk related issue. So I think they may have jumped a little bit too quick on that. I know they want to be visible and talk to the community about what's going on. But that sort of left me a little bit questioning. It's like, I'd rather the facts than sort of being told one thing then another. Look, in summary, Zwift, we all love it. It's fantastic. It works. It is super accurate when everything working, but reliability when it counts has let a lot of people down. So I think there's a bit of work to do there on the technical back end.
Yeah, and it was interesting that Eric, he fingered Amazon. He fingered Amazon Web Services as the cause of the problem, that something broke and they didn't react fast enough. Now, for people who don't know, and I'm no expert, but it's fairly well known that Amazon Web Services are a huge tech company who provides services to online businesses. And I don't know, Shane, it seemed odd that they would mess up.
Yeah, it all comes down to cost as well. And there's a balance between reliability and integrity of your systems being up and also the cost of that. It might cost you twice as much to have 2 systems up, 3 times as much to have 4 systems up. So there's always a really fine balance there. So if that needs to be something they go back to the drawing board with, I'd like to see that worked on in the background. We're not seeing a lot of development in the game space. So I'm hoping in the back end, this is what's being worked on as well at the same time.
But one thing is for sure is that these events are distressing for the company and the company really, really, really don't want them to happen. And I'm certain that they are doing all in their power to make sure that they don't. But we could do without having any more, I think. Nathan, don't you?
Yeah, and that's the thing is these events are great. We really want them to happen, I think. I mean, the hype and the fun, I mean, obviously people desire it. Like you had over 1,000 people join an event on Zwift. It used to be that 1,000 people would log in and just be riding around in the entire world. And now one event is attracting over 1,000 people. I mean, that's obviously there's a huge demand for it, right? And so like Shane was saying, I think there's a realization as Zwift is trying to scale up its events and start to go with more promotions, that there needs to be preparation for them in place, obviously.
It's slightly controversial thing to say. It's a good problem to have, is that so many people are flocking onto the platform that it's causing, in some form or another, capacity problems. So let's go on to talk about that a little bit. And I want to talk about Lady Zwifters. And, you know, we've talked before about using this term ladies. It is widely used in cycling, and almost every female cyclist I've ever spoken to never has a problem with it. So we'll just get that out there, that we are going to talk about Lady Zwifters, because that's the terminology that tends to be used. Now, I got the impression there were a few more on the platform, so I asked Zwift, and very quickly they came back and gave me some data. So, bit of a quiz question, boys. Shane, in percentage terms, where has Lady Zwifting gone from and to in the past few weeks?
Oh, interesting question. Look, I'll try and refer to the stats that I see from my content, which is sort of the same demographic. I'd say it's gone from 3.5% to 5%.
Right, good guess. Same guess from you, Nathan?
So I'd have to agree on the first percentage, that right around, I was going to say somewhere between 2 and 4%. And I think it might have jumped a little bit more than 5. I'm going to guess 8. I'm going to just go with the hard number. I'm going to say 10. I'm going to go up.
You're a little bit more aggressive than Shane, actually, Nathan, and you're closer to the truth, because a little bird told me, well, it wasn't a little bird, actually, it was Eric Min, that we have gone from 7% to 11%.
Wow, great.
Yeah, in the past few weeks alone. Now, whether that is all iOS, I don't know, but clearly it must have had an influence. So a final little quiz question. What do you think Eric thinks the figure will be within a year?
Eric loves to really spitball long range. I'll go 30%.
I'm going to go with not a number, but I think he's going to shoot for the same amount of demographics you'd see in real world.
Well, maybe Eric's playing a careful game, because he's now, of course, he's got investors to keep happy, so he doesn't want to set these targets too high. He reckoned that we could get to 20% of all Zwifters being ladies by this time next year, which I think is a reasonable ambition. So we're just going to pause for a minute, actually, and hear from one of these increasingly less rare creatures, the Lady Zwifters. This is Angela Prescott, a new Lady Zwifter who joined the community within the past few weeks.
Normally I cycle out on the road on my bike, summer and winter, but I don't like going out when it's icy or really, really windy, and I don't like setting off if it's actually raining. So what I actually did was I started going to some spin classes at my gym, which are actually really, really good. But the problem I have with the spin classes is that I get knee pain after the classes. I've had knee pain when I've been cycling before, but a bike fit sorted that out. So I thought the best idea was to maybe do spin classes, but actually on my own bike that I've actually been fitted for. And obviously having a turbo trainer, it means that I can get on my bike anytime, and it also saves a half an hour trip to the gym and a half an hour trip back, which means that in 1 hour I can do exactly the same that it would take me 2 hours to do otherwise.
Was the fact that the kind of technology on Zwift has suddenly got a bit easier, like using it on an iPad and stuff, was that a factor in your decision at all?
It was a lot easier to set up than I thought it would be, because I'm absolutely not technical at all. So that did worry me, but it was really, really easy to set up. And once I got onto Zwift, it was really, really great to follow. I've not used the stats to analyse what I've done, but I use a Fitbit. So I've been able to go onto my Fitbit to see that the training that I've done on Zwift is comparable to anything I've done in a spin class, and actually is a little bit harder than what I probably do when I'm on my bike, although it actually feels easier.
Well, you sound like a walking advert for Zwift. So now, if it was a choice between Zwift and spin class, which would you go for?
Definitely Zwift.
Okay, well, I think that's been really interesting. Just hearing from one of this big new group of people who've come onto Zwift, which is basically, or at least part of the big new group, is ladies. One last question, Angela. Why do you think there are so few ladies on Zwift? And we do know that even though numbers have gone up, there are relatively few ladies on Zwift.
Maybe, well, I don't know, but maybe it's because you would think that it would be quite technical to set up, but actually it wasn't.
Excellent. Well, very nice to talk to a new Zwifter. Glad to see that you've joined the community and you're enjoying it. What are your ambitions on Zwift? Would you race?
Well, I didn't think that I would, because I'm not competitive at all with people. But when I was riding on it, there was a guy with a Swiss flag that kept just coming past me. And I did get quite competitive, and I did keep putting in a lot more effort than the programme was telling me to in order to stay ahead of him.
Lovely to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed for your time.
Okay, thank you.
So, chaps, the irony of three blokes talking about this is not completely lost on me, it has to be said. But Angela was interesting there, wasn't she? Zwift as an alternative to spin classes, Nathan.
Yeah, I mean, she was talking about how she saves time. You know, that was the main thing, is that I don't have to get in the car, go to the gym, remember my shoes and whatever all that other stuff is, maybe forget it. And then that the whole trip to the gym is taken out, and that is that much more time that she can spend doing something else or getting more of a workout in. So I think it's extremely attractive to a lot of people, and especially women who are trying to fit every single thing that they possibly can into their day to just jump on the bike at home. So,
Shane, we've got to be super careful about generalisations here, because we could find ourselves in either deep or hot water, or possibly both, actually. But do you think that iOS is more female friendly?
I think it's more people friendly. Yeah, for sure. It allows more people with any level of, technical expertise just to press a few buttons and get up and running, rather than trying to find a USB extension cable and a USB key and going into a bike store, which I know females do have some trouble with. If there's a young kid behind the desk and you're not a real cyclist, and I mean there's many issues with that, many stories of that online, which I really don't like reading, but that is what happens. So with iOS, if it can click download from the App Store and use the equipment they already have to get online, it makes it easy for everyone. So yeah, I'm hoping iOS has contributed to that increase.
Right on.
Okay, well, listen, let's stick with the newbie theme for a few more moments. One of the very first things that lots of new Zwifters do is take an FTP test. I thought it might be useful to do a quick FTP 101. So here it is. This is the Zwiftcast FTP 101 with David Lipscomb, a coach from CIS Training Systems based in New York City.
We've been in the business since 2006, so we have some unique experience on how to train with purpose.
What is FTP and why is it important?
FTP is functional threshold power. It's the ability to ride consistently for an hour at a threshold level.
That threshold level can be measured using heart rates or power. In Zwift, it's power in watts. Threshold is the hardest riding you can sustain without blowing up.
How long can you hold an effort utilizing glucose as your energy store without blowing up? And a lot of times you hear a lot of people go too hard because they've utilized all their glucose stores, which makes them bonk. And the key is not to bonk, but it's the last 5 minutes of the effort is the most important, I believe.
And we'll return to those last 5 minutes shortly. So you don't blow up, you complete the test, Zwift gives you a number in watts. That is your FTP. So why is FTP so important?
I think it's important because it gives you a starting point on where you are as it relates to what level of training that you want to accomplish throughout the year. It gives you kind of a litmus test of, okay, where am I at this current state as far as my fitness level is concerned.
How hard should you go on an FTP test and how do you pace it?
The test is 20 minutes long, so I would say 15 minutes at a comfortable, steady pace. Not as hard as you can, but I believe it's the last 5 minutes of the test is where you really should put in that effort. Because a lot of times we go out too fast and then we fizzle out at the end. The key is to get stronger as you go through the test, not to get weaker. Everybody has, from a mental standpoint, 5 minutes in their body. That's that 20% of the effort that you can actually put out. But the 80% of what you're doing is very consistent.
Right on.
How do I know if I've gone hard enough on my FTP test?
Well, once you finish it, if you feel that you could have done more, then you might not have done it hard enough.
How important is it to be rested? And what do we mean by rested?
An FTP test is no joke, and let's just be real, folks. It's no joke. To be rested at least 3 days before a test, because you can't do a hard ride or a hard training ride, whatever it is, the day before and figure out that you want to, crush it on your FTP test. You need to at least 3 days of rest beforehand. Easy pedaling, get lots of rest, drink lots of liquids, get your mind right mentally to do the test. If you get that test right, you have a baseline to build off of.
We often see people posting their results, and it's fairly clear that they've never done a test before, and they say, is this good? Is this bad? Should it be higher? Should it be lower? How do people who are new to this interpret that number that the FTP test produces?
So when people say, and I see this happen all the time, I had a 220 FTP, I had a 230 FTP, or I had a 300 FTP. Okay, that's great. But it's what you do from that number that makes the total difference. And that number is a good starting place for you to look at and say, okay, how can I improve from that number? It's not so important about, okay, is the number good or bad? It's a starting point of where you are.
I am motivated by chasing wheels in races. And as regular listeners will know, I do quite a lot of racing. I'm not very good at it, but I do enjoy it. So why can't I just take my best 20-minute power from a race and call it my FTP?
To me, I think that's cheating. FTP is an individual effort. Okay, because what tends to happen is if you're in a group environment, especially here on Zwift, that creates this conversation around, okay, how hard can I pedal? If I could stick with the group, my number is going to increase. But the key is if you can do it individually, that's where you get most of your gains on how well you're doing if you can do it individually.
Right on.
Nathan, I know you're a coach yourself, and the thing is about coaches, they're a bit like lawyers, actually. If you employ 5 lawyers, you get 5 opinions. I think if you employ 5 coaches, you're likely to get 5 opinions as well. Do you think David's right, first of all, about that race method thing?
I think me and David will have to agree to disagree on this one. I think your best 20-minute power that you produce is your best 20-minute power that you produce. And if the race makes it happen, the race makes it happen. Now, I'm not talking about normalized power. Get me right there. Do not use normalized power from a race for your FTP. You need your raw average power. What did you produce for 20 minutes straight? Okay, that's what you're looking for. Okay. But if that was produced during a race, then that is the best power that your body can produce. And if you can do a better one during an individual, great. An FTP test, I think, from an empirical point of view, is not about how it's done. It's about what can the body do, so that you can set up all your zones around that.
I tend to agree with you. As you say, your best 20-minute power is your best 20-minute power. So who cares how you get it, really? Shane, have you ever been sick at the end of an FTP test?
No, I'm blessed with not being what we call a chucker. No, I can keep everything down, so I'm okay with that. I've seen stars and a bit of tunnel vision, but no, haven't actually brought anything back up.
Do you do them often?
Every now and then, and the data is kept off Strava, so no people will see me do them. Just a lot of people are afraid of them. They do hurt, but the more you do them, the better you become at them.
You can get good at FTP testing. I do think that's true.
You become a very good time trialer, and I'm known to go well against the clock, or like going against the clock and going very hard against the clock, and these are just time trials. So I like them.
All of that aside, and Nathan, you will get differing opinions from different coaches. That's just part of life's rich tapestry. All that aside, isn't it a marvelous thing in general that Zwift is helping people to self-educate about training with power and how useful that can be?
Oh, it's absolutely great. I think because people are going to have a much more, like we were saying before, objective standard for themselves, for them to hold themselves to and see actual advancement and get encouraged by it. I think that using power is always looked at as this kind of geeky thing that was out there that wasn't really needed, and you just go hard. And it's like having the numbers there to actually see. I go to the weight room this week and I'm lifting 50 pounds so many times. I go to the weight room 3 weeks from now and I'm lifting more. It's the same exact idea, and you can get encouraged by it, and you can see a real actual number that is increasing, and you can also train much smarter. So it's amazing what Zwift is opening up to everybody, because it's right there in front of you on the screen, showing you how fast you're going because of the power.
Shane, give me your top tip.
Do more of them. You've got to be familiar with what you're actually going to go through, because if you don't know what's coming up, yeah, it's going to be painful, but all training that's adaptation. That's where you're going to get your gains from. But if you think you're going to do really, really bad in one, just do one, and then you've got a number. And next time, I can guarantee, if you feel like you don't like doing it and you felt like you've had a bad one, next time you're going to see a gain there, because you've got a number to aim for and a number to beat.
Yeah, that is a very good tip, actually. Nathan.
Yeah, so David had a really good tip, actually. You start off comfortably hard. You need to be comfortable and yet feel like you're going somewhat hard at the beginning. If you feel uncomfortable immediately in the first 5 minutes, you are going to peter off, and it's not going to be your best power you can produce over that 20 minutes. And it should move into some fairly good discomfort into the 10 minutes. And then that last 5, you should have a good amount of kick left to really build up as much burn as you possibly can and kick it through that last 5 minutes.
Good work, boys. Yep, that's excellent stuff.
Right on.
Yet another amazing community resource has appeared for Zwift. It's aimed primarily at racers, and very simply, zwiftrankings.com, or the Cyclogent Virtual Rankings site, does what it says on the tin. I caught up with Frank Garcia, a noted racer, veteran Zwifter, and the man who led the team which created it. I started by asking him for the elevator pitch.
The new site is a ranking site which looks to sort of improve the racing experience, enhance it maybe is a better way to say it, by providing some rankings that are based on performance. One of the things that it does, as well as ranking people, is put them into divisions so that they can see how like people are doing and compare themselves against people with similar abilities.
The top 2 divisions are Pro and Elite. There are then 9 divisions for ordinary mortals and 1 division for race newbies or rookies. You can see how you rank on flat courses, hilly courses, or a combination, as well as TT and Team TT. The maths behind how the system works is ferociously complicated, but as Frank explained, a really important metric for working out how many points you score in any given race is not only your own performance, but the strength of the field.
You might get into a race and the L&Bs and the Cartwrights might be there, and if they are, the strength of field will certainly be much higher than if they weren't there. And so in any given race, we measure the strength of the field, and you score your points based upon how you finish against that strength of field.
That's clever. I'm not even going to ask how you've managed to achieve that, but that is really clever. I noticed that I was hovering around the 1,000 points. Did I start with 1,000 points, or have I managed to accrue 1,000 points?
Everybody starts with 1,000 points.
Yeah, I thought that might be the case.
And then you can move up or down. In any given race, there is sort of an equal split of positive and negative points, and that keeps the system fresh, if you will. So you just don't move up and stay up. You have to be consistent in terms of your performance.
Could you just confirm my suspicion that there is a really, really serious amount of maths and computing power and data crunching and just general all-round geekery involved in the under the hood in this site?
Absolutely. There is a lot of it. We'll be tweaking it with some community input, over the coming days. Right now there's some discussions on, how to handle DNFs and, what's appropriate and what's not. But there's a lot of these little details. Our hope is that for someone who wants to understand, we provide some documentation on the site, then they can dig into it. But our hope is that it just feels right. You go in, you finish a race, you go look at it, and you're like, yeah, okay, that feels right. So that's what we're striving for. So hopefully the complexity, although significant in how we compute it, when you use it is, you're just like, okay, that feels right, and I don't really have to worry about all the gory details.
Now, I know you're working alongside the much-loved Zwift Power, but this is not any kind of split, or there's, you're working hand in hand, aren't you, with Zwift Power? This is not in any sense a rival.
We love Zwift Power. I love all the power information, the results, the zones. It's an amazing site. And as we say in the cover letter on the site, this is not intended in any way, shape, or form to be a replacement for anything that exists currently. This is just a ranking site, just a different view of the data, sort of a longer time period view is basically what it ends up being. So, whereas Zwift Power is, all about the race, we're all about the races. So that's where the difference is. So no, we look to work with the community. We've been working very, very closely with Zwift Power in order to create this.
Well, as it stands, it's a majorly impressive piece of work. But I've got to ask you, what's the kind of next step, or what little features might you surprise us with?
Well, I think the next big step, Simon, is even broader for the community. So sort of stepping outside of the racing community, which was where we started, but to sort of broaden that out to the community as a whole. For instance, Strava right now says you can't compete in a challenge with virtual miles or virtual kilometers, as it were. And so we hope to bring something to Cyclogent Rankings in the near future where we can have climbing challenges and distance challenges just for the broader community, so that anybody can do that sort of on their own, don't have to join a race, and we can have some fun and have badges and that sort of fun stuff as well in the site.
Well, it is. Yet again, the community delivers. It is a stonking piece of work. The amount of detail that's in even this early iteration is just mind-blowing, really. Absolutely terrific. Congratulations, Frank. I think it's a brilliant initiative.
Thank you very much.
That is a piece of work. And I'm sure, like many racers, the very, very, very first thing I did as soon as this thing was launched was go and see where I was. And it was quite complicated to look at first. I do have to say, it did take me a few moments to get my head around it. But once I'd done a bit of random clicking and stuff, I did manage to find where I sat. And as Frank said, it felt right. I was more or less where I would have expected to be, which is, I was kind of midway in Division 4, which was sort of where I thought I might be. Shane, have you checked yours?
Look, I'll have to make a confession. No. I've been outside working on the tan lines, chasing pros and looking for sprinklers where I can get more water from. So I haven't got around to it yet. But from what I heard just there, that's fascinating. I am still in awe of these community projects that are taking place and the brains behind them. Just brilliant.
Nathan, I guess you didn't need to check your ranking.
We'd actually checked it live when we did an interview with Frank on stream right when they launched it, and everybody laughed at me. I don't race on Zwift much right now. I commentate all the races, so I'm like a rookie. I have 1,000 points like you do. I'm like,
Nathan's a Cat 5.
I'm Cat 5 in Zwift now, it looks like. And, I'll start racing again soon. The collarbone had something to do with that as well.
And you look at these things and you just stand back in amazement. You're just completely gobsmacked about how this community responds to the challenges of regulating and organising racing on the platform. It is truly amazing stuff. On the flip side, let's go to the power-ups of a pussy's place. So for those who might have missed this, and you were quite lucky if you did miss it, actually, because it got incredibly acrimonious and very, very sweary. Some dude came on Facebook and ranted hugely about the use of power-ups in races. And it wasn't just on Facebook. He was streaming this guy on YouTube, and The language was just off the scale. And the thing is, I kind of don't mind people swearing at themselves, being frustrated because they missed a break in a race or something. But this guy was swearing at other racers, and not just swearing, seriously abusing other racers for using power-ups in a race where the use of power-ups were permitted. So what? Anyway, I was going to get him on the podcast, but in the end, I decided after a bit of a dialogue with some people who were involved in the argument that actually we weren't going to get him on because he's just some kind of hideous attention seeker. Having said that, has he got a point? I mean, Nathan, if the race rules say you can use power-ups, you can use power-ups. End of discussion, surely.
So early on in Zwift, I had a love-hate relationship with power-ups. So they didn't bother me nearly as much as they bother this individual. And now I've completely changed my view on it, actually, to not even being in the middle on it. I think that they actually bring more of a real-life experience to the game, actually. I think because we walk into the virtual world and the control that it provides us to see what's happening with power and with the individuals around us and know what they're producing too, it brings some assumption of control that you actually don't have on random number games that are played in the real world. And so I think it actually adds something to Zwift that we experience in the real world, actually, in random number games. That the reality is that there is a whole lot of luck that goes into real life group dynamics in a road race. And that it's different, obviously, in the way that's presented in Zwift. And maybe Zwift could change some things up even to make it a little bit more like a real life situation. If they added wind that randomly came at different times throughout the race and somebody could see that wind going at a different time and then use it at that time, that would be a random number game that somebody got an advantage from. And so, and there are probably hundreds of circumstances that we could talk about right now in a group dynamic in a real life race where random number games gave somebody a huge advantage and they won the race because of it. And I think power-ups actually bring a real life thing into it. So I've actually changed on it, and I actually prefer the power-up ones. Now, at the same time, there's some days where I'm like, I just want to know what you got and know what I got, and let's go. And so there's a place for that. And I think that you have a broad number of events that you can jump into that have them or don't have them. So there's my piece on it.
Yeah, well, no, as usual, they're very well thought through views, and you watch a lot of racing. So personally, I think you're right. Shane, is he kind of like purist to hate power-ups?
I don't know. Look, I've been rolled in a sprint because somebody used a power-up, and I got furious for a few seconds, and then went, that's the game. And that's the tool chest they had to use. So I'm all about use the tools given. But I think the question there is that because they're randomly assigned, and you don't all start with, say, a swag of, you've got, say, one, I won't say burrito, they're now gone. You've got one sort of truck for drafting and aero helmet and things like that. It's sort of randomly assigned. So when you're coming in, down into that sprint, you don't want the truck, you want the aero helmet. So it's a bit of randomness there. We've got to gamify this, because if we simulated outside so perfectly, just go right outside. There's got to be something different and something fun. So I think they add an element of fun, and there's a lot more they could be doing with them too.
Yeah. Good point, Shane. Good point to finish on, or at least that little section. One of the biggest questions that vex Zwifters is what type of trainer they should use, and often, understandably, it's all about budget. But budget aside, one of the biggest debates is wheel-off or direct drive trainer or wheel-on trainer, the type of trainer that generates resistance by having contact with the rear tyre. Now, I asked a Zwifter to make that decision, and I provided him with the kits he needed to make that decision, and hopefully, as he talks us through how he made that decision, the process might give you a bit of insight. Here's my friend Paul Stokes with the next stage of his trainer journey.
So my journey up the turbo trainer hierarchy seems to take another step. I own a Tax Vortex and like it a lot. I then had use of an elite ramper, which I was completely taken with, like that one awful lot. And now I've been given a Wahoo kicker to try out. Obviously, it's a wheel-off trainer, so it's different to the others. Ride on! I don't have a permanent setup, so I am getting trainers out, putting them away a lot. The one advantage of the kicker over perhaps the ramper and the vortex is it's quite small. It folds away very, very small. So for my personal situation, that's a big plus. So when it isn't set up, that's going to help keep the domestic harmony that I need to maintain to be able to use the trainers as much as I'd like to. The first thing you notice is that it's got some weight to it. This isn't the sort of thing you'd be throwing around too much. The two legs fold out really easily, just click very solidly and securely in place. It seems very stable. The legs are adjustable, which is a nice touch, but I guess for a piece of kit that costs as much as this does, you kind of expect it. Now, this wasn't a new trainer out of the box, so someone has had it set up before. I just had to put a cassette on it and I was good to go. Okay, so we're pedaling. There's a noise, of course there's a noise. I guess there's a slight whine to it, but it's not obtrusively loud or irritating, so... Geez, this thing rolls and rolls and rolls. The thing I really liked about the ramper was that feeling of momentum it gave you, but this thing just rolls forever. I'm on a really flat piece of the course, so there's no gradient changes at the moment, but the changes in power for when I just ease off the pedals slightly or start pedaling are amazingly quick. Much, much faster than the ramper, which in itself was a touch quicker than the vortex that I had before. The responsiveness and that speed is quite amazing compared to the other trainers I've used, and you have to ride a little bit differently. You can really judge it quite precisely to come up and get on somebody's wheel and ease off very slightly. On the other trainers I've got where there is a slight lag, only momentary, but it means you'd start pedaling and almost cruise up to the back of a group or a wheel and then reintroduce the power when you needed to. This thing, you can judge it, really finesse it. It's quite impressive. When you're actually riding, you get that real sense of keeping on top of a gear. I think the actual effort to turn or to get a particular power, a particular gear, may not be dramatically different when you're actually putting the power down. But if you lift off just slightly, a little bit with the ramper, more so with the vortex, you really have to put a big dig in to get the wheel up to speed again. Whereas that sense of momentum or that inertia that you've got means you can just pick up that gear again and, as I said, get on top of it. And that's, I think, perhaps more similar to it was on the road. I know we're not, and it's never going to be the same, but it's a very nice feeling. Okay, so rather foolishly, and a bit of a impulsive decision, I did the Broad Street sprint. The kick is really nice for the sprints and the big efforts. Very stable. You get that power immediately when you kick it down. And it gives you a certain confidence to push a bit harder, I think, than I would on the other trainers. Came fourth as it goes by of interest out of 160 odd. With hindsight, I reckon I could have got that, but that's more about me, less about the trainer. Right on! So far so good, I'm liking it. It's a big chunk of money. Whether I like it twice as much as the ramper, I'm not immediately convinced. Maybe it's good, it's better than the ramper, obviously and undoubtedly. Whether it's twice as good, I don't know. We'll see.
And we will see. We'll see before the end of the podcast when Paul comes back to tell us whether his journey from wheel on to wheel off is going to be completed. Okay, well, we're back with Paul for his ultimate verdict before the end of the podcast. And I have to tell you, it's an interesting choice he eventually makes. Okay, guys, well, it wouldn't really be a proper episode without an update on Fluxgate. An eagerly awaited and keenly priced direct dive trainer is launched by Tax, and Shane breaks two, and quite a few people complain that they don't work. Shane, where are we with Llama V Flux Part 3?
Round 3 is still pending. Tax have been communicating quite a lot with the Flux owners group on Facebook, which has been great. And as we see with Zwift, the community are 3 steps ahead. What the community have done in this Flux owners group, they've collated all the serial numbers of those Fluxes that have failed, and they've been running the numbers and putting Tax to the sword about what they're claiming, the 1.7% failure rate. And I think these guys are like, again, the community just absolutely amaze me. There's some mathematicians in there grabbing some stats and looking at the numbers, and they're claiming about 3% failure rate. But I'm sort of sitting back going, hang on, half the Fluxes out there are probably still in boxes, so we don't know the real failure rate. Look, I called Fluxgate early on. I'm every day I'm calling Fluxgate louder and louder that they should be looking at a full product recall. I've got a scrapbook of failures of videos and people emailing me about them. It's an absolute nightmare, and it's getting worse every day. So that's where we're at with that. I've come across the Flux here at the Tour Down Under Village. Nobody is actually riding it. Every event that I've seen Tax at, nobody's riding a Flux. Is that lack of confidence in their product itself? That wouldn't surprise me. But stay tuned, ongoing.
Well, I mean, they did release a very, very detailed statements on the results of their investigations into what's gone wrong. And that in itself is to be hugely welcomed, isn't it? You know, they're talking to the consumers, they're being honest that there is a problem, and they're saying what they think that the problem is. And actually those maths charts that you refer to, and I agree with you, that the response from the community has been amazing. I mean, there are people plotting this using all kinds of formulas I have no idea whether are robust or not, but they certainly look impressive. And they seem to very, very strongly suggest that it is only very early serial numbers affected. But yeah, I think there might be a way to run on this story yet. And it has been damaging for Tax. It definitely has. But, maybe they'll recover. Now, a bit of self-promotion, if you'll forgive it. After the last podcast, John Mayfield, the very important decision maker and creative genius at Zwift, popped onto the Zwiftcast listeners group on Facebook to talk a bit more about a couple of things that we discussed last time. And I thought it was really interesting, guys. I don't know if you saw those posts, but he looked to me as though he was kind of holding back a bit. There was I think he said, I could have written 2 pages on what you guys were talking about. Now, that suggests to me that we got several things. I was going to say we got several things wrong. That suggests to me that our speculation may not have been 100% accurate, but we are working with kind of limited information. But one of the good things about John coming on was he set us right on a few things and provided some new information here and there. And he introduced the idea of Zwift Gold instead of spending XP points, and all of this in the context of Zwift opening a virtual bike shop where you can get stuff. What's your understanding of what John said and how it might work, Nathan? Did it take us any further forward?
I think it was confirming the idea that we don't spend XP points in games. You earn those and you have those, and you gain your level and you never lose your level, and the XP points are a direct relation to your level. And so, and the fact that he called it gold was interesting to me instead of currency. I used the word currency, but I mean, they essentially mean the same thing. And you have like in World of Warcraft uses gold. I think it's coins in other ones, so it doesn't really matter whatever the currency is. But I think his the gold data that he's talking about, I thought that the points were going to be that maybe, but he said that the balances are currently 0. So I wonder if the points were wiped. Do you guys remember seeing points recently? If I open Zwift right now, am I still going to find? Do you guys remember early on in beta there was like XP, and then there was this points thing that was there as well that wasn't exactly the same as the XP, and it also seemed to go along with my calories, and those seem to have gone away now. I think I can't find them anywhere, and so I'm wondering if maybe everybody's balances got wiped in preparation. This is conjecture completely, obviously, but for something that might be coming down there. My concern was the part where it says been pushed back years now. And I'm like, no, I want a store. I want my gold. I want to start earning things. And so I'm not sure if that meant push back years from the original, and now we're looking at maybe it happening sometime soon, hopefully. Or if there's just a lot more going on that we're unaware of before they can try and grab that in development.
Yeah, it was difficult to interpret that. I mean, my interpretation of it was that, yeah, we need to do this for ages and we've just not got around to doing it, rather than you're going to have to wait several years for it to happen. Which brings us on, actually, Shane, to something that you hinted at right at the beginning of this episode, and it was something I had down on our list of things to talk about. And I get it's a bit of a negative thing, really, but it's... Do we feel, and this I think is going to be particularly pertinent to people who've been on the platform for longer than the new people, so the kind of Zwift veterans, if you like. But do we feel that development has been compromised in pursuit of growth over the past 2 to 3 months, or let's call it this indoor riding season in the Northern Hemisphere? I mean, it wouldn't be surprising if that was the case. The platform's got to grow, it's got to bring in more revenue, but there's not really been much new stuff, has there?
Yeah, that's what I did hint at early on. I mean, there's been discussion, and the discussion sort of comes in waves and flows on Zwift riders as well about, I mean, remember the other week we were talking about drafting. And I think the result, there was nothing has actually changed in almost a year or so with drafting. Yeah. So there's no development there. And even just little things that were added early on quite quickly in the beta period. I think we got conditioned for new toys and new shiny things. So I think that's where us old school Zwifters are sort of well, hang on, where's all this new shiny stuff that we're used to getting? So there has been a bit of a slowdown there in visibility, but I personally think the new Zwifters it's still a whole new world to them, and they won't notice that. So it's probably just an old school thing, just being old and grumpy.
I think it is a bit being old and grumpy, Nathan. There is a bit of that, isn't there? I mean, we've now been riding the same courses for an awful long time. I mean, there's a couple of simple things that could be done that would really just make me a bit happier. And one is, I really wish we could run the events in reverse on Watopia. I am now really officially fed up with racing Watopia flat forward.
Yeah, it would be nice to have different directions. I could completely understand that. I think different directions would be very helpful right now to make it so that it lessens the amount of traffic during the events too. So a lot of people don't go backwards. If you've noticed on a lot of the courses, most people just ride forward. They don't turn around. And so if we could run races backwards, it would kind of lessen how many just cyclists there are to get through, and drafting on other people who are not a part of your event, all these other things that come up because of that. So running events backwards would be absolutely amazing. The other thing though too is I think achievements and go after on a daily, like a daily thing that you could do. the idea that I could have a daily to go in. I have this objective I go in and do each day, and it earns me something in some sort of way. And people have a motivation besides riding the mountain route again or whatever it is. Those things are great and cool, but we've done them. Some of our old schoolers have done them a lot of times, and dailies that are changing each day too, and they're always a little bit different. Something different to go do and go after and earn is a great way to keep people engaged.
It's not surprising, is it, if you look at the trajectory of companies like Zwift, that development has been to an extent sacrificed for growth. I mean, I'm not moaning about it. It's a fact of life, and if the platform is going to develop in any meaningful way, this phase simply has to be completed, and it's kind of not surprising we've not had too many shiny new toys. Although, and again, John was on talking about this in the forums. It does look like Apple TV, Zwift as a native app on Apple TV could be closer than we possibly think. And there was an announcement from Apple which may have just hastened that process or made that process for Zwift easier in terms of the size of app that Apple TV will now accommodate. Shane, I've got a sneaking suspicion this could be absolutely enormous for Zwift, because basically it's a way onto the platform for $130. You don't need a computer. That's all you need is this little box from Apple.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It really comes down to how well it's going to run on that hardware. Now, Apple are notoriously bad on their MacBook Pros, which I own. Well, it runs in standard mode or basic mode pretty well. And if you haven't seen 4K, 60 frames to 90 frames a sec, you don't know what you're missing out on. But it looks okay. But for me, as a hardcore Zwifter on the Alienware platform, it'll need to at least get that kind of quality on the Apple TV.
Yeah, but the thing is, but we're picky, Shade. I mean, I felt exactly the same. But then I just kind of put somebody else's shoes on for a while and thought, okay, well, I'm not very good at computers. I don't have a very good computer. My work laptop is locked down. They won't let me put any software on it. I've got an iPad, but it's a bit of an old one. So for $140, and a cheap cable to hook up to my big TV, I can get Zwift and get Zwift looking pretty good. I mean, I think that's a pretty attractive proposition for that sector of people. And that, I think, will be quite a large sector of people.
But the big question is, what will be the interface? Because remember, Apple TV isn't touchscreen and doesn't come with a keyboard. So are we going to be waving a little remote around trying to log in? Or are we going to be using Apple Siri to try and tell it our passwords? That's going to be a hurdle. Or do we have to get a keyboard with a dongle adapter to FireWire to USB to Lightning to 30-pin to... No, I'm only kidding. There'll be a solution there, but I'm keen to see how they do it.
Yeah. No, that's true. And that will be an interesting point. Okay, let's hear the final verdict from Paul, who's been riding both a wheel-on and a wheel-off trainer and trying to decide for him if the extra money for the direct drive trainer is worth it.
So my time with the kicker is coming towards an end. Gentle spin. I'm sort of asking myself the question, would I buy a Wahoo kicker? I love it. It's a good trainer. It's the first wheel-off trainer I've had, and you just feel a bit more grown up, proper cyclist. You just feel the part a little bit more. It's a really good piece of kit. Really accurate. It feels very fast in its changes of gradient and things. I like it a lot. It folds down really small, which is great for me and my setup. I like it an awful lot. Would I pay? Is it worth that much more than the Ramper that I have a genuine soft spot for, or the Vortex that I was very happy with? Yeah, I'm not quite so sure. In fact, I probably wouldn't. If cash wasn't an object or a problem, yeah, I probably would spend the extra. But for most people, I'm not sure it's really worth it. The difference in this and the Ramper is market, and you can feel the differences and see the differences, but it's not worth double the money in my view. So as much as I love it, and if anyone's bought one, you haven't made a bad decision. I think you've just got a bit more money than I have.
Right on.
Okay, well, that was interesting. A very personal view from Paul. Slightly contrarian one, but one I think it's definitely possible to understand. Nathan, what's coming up on Community Live? What's the biggest thing coming up on Community Live in the next week or two?
So the big things that are coming up are going to be the kind of a relaunch of Zwift on board. It's getting some upgrades. And so the live action of individuals from their pain caves in the middle of races, and that really being highlighted well. The other thing obviously is going to be when the schedule being launched so that you can have a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Here's who's going to be live and at what time. Those are two main things, and then the addition of other things outside of racing. So we're looking to launch a daily racer. So today, we're gonna have like 15 to 30 different racers who we highlight, and today it's this person's race, and then a little bit of like chat and coach. We're getting a couple people that are coming in that are gonna be having just some chat with them and get some good information about how do they do Zwift, prolific people who are really accomplished in the world of cycling that can come in and help individuals get involved in Zwift, or how do they use it for a training platform, any other question you want to throw at them in the interactive environment.
That sounds excellent. Sounds really, really, really good. Shane, do you feel slightly divorced from Zwift? I mean, we forget, obviously, in the Northern Hemisphere that it is high summer for you. It's tennis, it's road racing on the roads. Do you feel slightly different about the platform now than you would do in the middle of winter? I mean, surely you do, although you're doing a big meetup, aren't you, in the next day or so, based around the Tour Down Under?
Yeah, for sure. The distance thing's always there, given we're in the opposite time zones to everybody. So a lot of the races and also our access to bandwidth is, as you know, is terrible. So we've got two whammies against us there. So there is a bit of distance for almost everything on the internet, I guess, especially when it comes to high bandwidth things and large events that involve a lot of people from all around the world. I mean, even this podcast, we have to sort of align our schedules, and somebody's always missing out. Unfortunately, it's usually Nathan in the middle of the night. So we get a bit of that. But yeah, as you mentioned, we're all catching up here at the Tour Down Under tonight. So we have Steve, Mike, Kate and Fabio, all from Zwift. We've also got Tim Searle, the famous leader of the HDR ride, and also Dave Parsons helping run the show at his little spin studio. And we've got, well, I say little spin studio, but we've got nearly 200 people coming tonight. So this is where everybody who cycles in Australia comes to for the week, and we're all here, and I think everyone's going to the Zwift event, so it's going to be huge.
Is it air conditioned?
The spin room has some fans, so we might just point them out into the field of people standing around. We'll all have cold beers anyway, given it's Australia, so I think we'll be fine.
I was going to say, I would imagine even if the air's not cold, the beer will be.
Exactly.
Excellent. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. Please pass on my best wishes to all Australian Zwifters. Tim Searle, I do know because due to the vagaries of my schedule and the way Australian time zones work, as you were just talking about, I often do that HDR ride, actually, and it's a very, very good ride. It's a terrific ride. So I hope you all have a great time there tonight. Nathan, it's fantastic to see you on Community Live. I know it's been a long time in the planning. It's really great to see it come to fruition. So people should check Facebook for that. Nice to speak to you both once again. We're never short of things to talk about, are we really? Related to this silly virtual cycling game. It constantly surprises me, but we always find something new and fresh to talk about. Thanks very much indeed, guys. Lovely to talk to you again. See you next time.
Thank you, Simon. Thanks, mate.
It just remains for me to thank Zwift for their continuing support for the Zwiftcast and to remind you that the company leaves us free to say whatever we like.